to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Friday, December 6th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're watching News Generation. Today, we're joined by Choi-ji.
Happy Friday!
Happy Friday, and Kang Moon-ju.
Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for joining us. Now, both here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So, it's Friday, which means it's time to explore topics that resonate with young people around the world. As the holiday season approaches, singles in Korea often express that this time of the year feels particularly lonely for them. So, I want to first ask our panelists, how about you? Are you also feeling lonely?
You know, we have the expression here in Korea where you say like 옆구리 시리다. It means the side of your body or your waist is quite chilly. You're feeling lonely.
Because you have no one beside you,
exactly.
right?
You have no company with you. Well, I personally don't like winter because it's very cold and it can feel quite lonely without a partner, of course, especially during the end of year season because it's all festive. However, even though I struggle in the cold, as someone who grew up in one of the hottest countries, Thailand, I'm unable to bear the cold. However, I think this winter will be a little warmer than before.
That's a very mysterious but interesting answer. Thank you for sharing that with us. What about you, Moon-ju?
Well, you got me by saying lonely. Yeah, at this moment of the year and like weather gets cold, it's very hard to strive through this winter, and I'm also feeling empty. And like as a representative of many singles watching this News Generation, I say we can get through this ongoing end of the year and the Christmas season, and let's all stand together and fight this frosty winter emotions.
Maybe you guys can go through it together with News Gen.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. And we've talked about this subject before on our show, but recently local governments have started hosting matchmaking events for singles who are ready to mingle. So I want to ask you, T, we've talked about this a few months ago, but have we been seeing an increase in number of these programs?
Oh, yes, we did. And I like that rhyme, by the way.
Single ready to mingle.
Well, yes, there's been a notable increase in these matchmaking events organized by local governments here in the country. For instance, in November, the Seoul Metropolitan Government planned a matchmaking event that attracted over 3,000 applicants.
3,000?
Yes, resulting in a competitive ratio of 33-1.
Wow.
Now, the event aimed to recruit 100 single men and women for a group meeting program at Sebitsum on the Han River, featuring activities such as a yacht tour and recreational games. And to ensure credibility, participants were required to submit documents like resident registration certificates, employment certificates, and even marriage relation certificates.
Wow.
And similarly, other local governments have been actively organizing such events. For example, Seongnam City.
Oh, that one is popular.
Yes, has hosted multiple matchmaking events, in fact, including one in November as well, which also saw a high number of applicants. Now, these initiatives are all part of a broader effort to address the country's low birth rate by encouraging marriages and family formation. First of all, helping out with singles become couples.
Right, because it's becoming increasingly harder, young people say, to meet new people because many of them just go from home, work, like me. And as Ji mentioned, Moon-ju, Seoul City government is not the only local government that is preparing these programs, right?
Yeah, in fact it is. Along with this particular event that we just talked about, like local government hosted matchmaking programs are like springing up. And in fact, from 2022 to August 2024, 78 related programs have been planned by almost every local government in South Korea. And also, but some question the effectiveness of this like program and project and criticize it as a mere waste of tax, pointing out that only 1% actually ended up marrying.
I see. So there are some divided opinions, but it is a fact that we're seeing a growing number of these government-hosted matchmaking events. So I want to ask you, Moon-ju, why do you think we are seeing more of these programs? Because this was a really, really interesting news that caught attention not only here in Korea, but in other parts of the world. We've seen international media outlets reporting these Korean government-led matchmaking programs because traditionally matchmaking or blind dates were handled by friends, family, or through dating apps.
Yeah, I think the strongest motivation here is the constantly decreasing the crude marriage rate, which is the number of marriages per 1,000 people in a population during a specific period, which is normally 1 year, and to turn around the current low birth rate in South Korea. An increase in the marriage rate should precede, of course, but the country is experiencing a lack of youth population, and thus we could believe that concerns of the local government regarding this phenomenon have initiated matchmaking events these days. Yeah.
Right. So from those who are organizing these events, they think that this will provide more chances for young people to meet their potential partners, which will help them get married and eventually start a family. But for these events to really continue, there needs to be a consistent demand from the participants. So do you think that many young people from our generation are willing to participate?
Well, let me answer that based on a survey that was conducted last year, which analyzed the marriage perceptions of young people in their 20s and 30s. So let's take a look at the screen together. Now, on the screen, these two pie graphs illustrate the disparity between men and women regarding their willingness to participate in one of these locally organized group blind dates. Now, as you see, less than 10%, in fact, only 3% of women expressed a willingness to take part, while almost half, or a little over 30% of male respondents indicated that they were open to joining these events. Now, these programs have faced criticism over their effectiveness and, like Moon just said, allocation of public funds. And some argue that they do not address the underlying issue that deter young people from marriage, such as economic instability, high housing costs. And also some critics question whether the demand for such programs is substantial enough to justify significant public investment in these events.
I see. So there are definitely mixed reactions towards these programs, but it's really interesting how more men are willing to participate. I think this could be because in the past we saw the number of males outnumbering the number of females.
Yeah.
So maybe males need more chances to find females, singles that is. And to you, Munjo, are you, based on your experience or looking at your peers, do you think that there is a growing interest in participating in these government-led matchmaking programs?
Yeah, I think definitely like many find this opportunity beneficial for like those who are willing to marry but having a hard time meeting partners. So in fact, if we take a look at like applicants for the Seoul matchmaking event, many of the women were primary school teachers or like nurses, which are mostly considered a female dominant profession groups, while many of men or IT industry workers or firefighters, police officers, which are then mostly considered as male-dominant profession groups. So these occupation groups typically find it very hard to meet like partners or opposite genders at workplaces. So where spend people most of their day, right? So therefore, if locally organized group blind dates are like well designed, like there would be demands for these programs, especially for those in single gender dominated profession groups.
Right. So people working in the fields that you've mentioned, participating in these programs definitely will give them more chances to meet new people. So as part of the younger generation, you both represent millennials and Gen Zs. Let's now hear your personal take on these matchmaking events. So please raise the O or X sign based on your opinion of the following scenarios. Number one, I'd be open to joining a government-hosted matchmaking event, which we've been talking about, that screens participants and verifies their identity. 1, 2, 3. X and X. Oh, that's interesting. Why?
It is. I can't imagine myself being in one of these situations. It gives me goosebumps. I'd rather meet someone through a natural encounter, you know, and also in one of these setup events, you can't really be yourself.
Oh.
And everybody else will try to look the best version of themselves, which isn't really being honest. So I wouldn't attend one of these events.
By the way, you're dressing up like you
like a
can
blind
attend.
date.
Yeah, blind date look. Then why did you choose X, Munju?
Yeah, I think he just represented me. I'm also like 자만추 type of person, like natural encounter. So I'm not really good at this kind of doing blind dates. And also, like, this is just not my personal preference, but I believe there might be some people who will hold O instead of me.
Right.
Because, like, they're willing to do blind dates to so many people, like my friends. So, like, I believe they would, because at least identity of the other is verified. So it's a great opportunity to like verify each other. So I think some might hold O, but me, I'm X.
I see. So let's move on to our second scenario. Number 2, I believe these events are effective and necessary to address the low birth rate. This is a very important question. 1, 2, 3. X and X. Oh, we are having a lot of X's today.
Yeah,
let's first start with you, Bunju.
Yeah, I believe the birth rate and the marriage rate is very completely different stories. So like it is not uncommon to find like married couples who are not willing to have children. So personally, I'm skeptical about like the relationship between the birth rate and the marriage rate. So I hold X for this question. Yeah.
I see. Then what about you, Chi?
Well, I think it's only a very recreational event, and it's only a temporary stopgap measure for the more profound social issue of low fertility. And like Munju said, it's not just about like not being able to meet someone. Even couples, they choose not to get married because of other more serious matters like economic concerns. So I don't think this is a very long-term solution to the ongoing issue.
I think you guys both agree that these government-hosted blind dates, they are not the fundamental solution to boost marriage rates and further boosting birth rates, because there are many other things that we have to consider, young people considering when they are wondering about getting married or starting a family. So our last scenario of the day, number 3, the high viewership of blind date TV programs, which we are seeing a lot here in Korea, reflects people enjoying them just for entertainment rather than genuine interest in participating themselves. 1, 2, 3. Oh, and our first O's of the day. Why?
Well, I think it's only for entertainment because people are really able to resonate with the participants or contestants of these reality shows because they could be anyone around you.
Right.
It could even be yourself. And so you can really place yourself in the shoes of these participants to sort of simulate what you would have done if you were in that situation. But I don't think people really have that courage to be there themselves. I think it's just an entertainment and they can learn from it vicariously, I think.
Learn valuable life experiences vicariously.
Exactly.
What do you think, Bunju?
I think I'm the perfect example of why I hold this O. Probably I've watched like every existing blind date
Really?
TV program
Wow.
in South Korea, like you name it, I've watched it. But I believe, and I also get very immersed in the participants. I cry, I get mad, I laugh with them, like, right? But personally, I don't think I would participate because I'm not ready to like show the public like how I develop my relations with others. So, and I think it's kind of a really personal thing, like that you do not want to share with lots of people. So I hold O and I don't want to participate in myself. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that our O and X session today, it gives a lot for the government-hosted blind dates to think about and consider when moving forward. Now, we also wanted to listen to our viewers' opinions, so we also asked them if government-organized matchmaking events exist in their countries. Let's take a look at some of their responses. Benny D97 says, there haven't been any mass blind date events organized by governments here in the Philippines, but private blind dates are being done. Maybe I will join one. Hehe. Dore81529, I don't know of any in America. Smiley says, I've heard there are events like that in Japan and Korea, but I don't really hear much about them in the UK. People here seem to rely more on dating apps instead. So based on our viewers' comments, we can see that government-hosted blind dates are unique in Korea and maybe in Japan. So for more on this topic, we're actually going to be joined by a journalist based in Japan after this break.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Today we're joined by Walter Sim, Japan correspondent at the Straits Times. Welcome, Walter.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. So Walter, we want to first ask you, does Japan also have government-hosted matchmaking events? And if so, how can you apply and how do they work?
Well, I do see a lot of similarities with South Korea here in Japan based on the discussion that you had earlier with your panelists. And here in Japan, many local governments are also taking the lead in matchmaking events and in playing Cupid with the support of subsidies and grants from the national government. So to apply, an individual, of course, has to be unmarried, right? And to apply, they would approach the government by applying for access to the matchmaking service. And this could take several formats. It could be, say, an online platform. It could be a matchmaking app, such as one that was launched by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government this year. So once having access to these online platforms or apps, then would an individual have access to these government-hosted matchmaking events. But of course, the criteria to join these platforms is also very strict. Like in South Korea, that it requires a lot of documents to be submitted, be it in income, be it family background, and so on and so forth. So this is a process where local authorities kind of see if the users are serious, whether they are legitimate, and so on. Of course, applicants themselves are expected to pay an application fee of at least 10,000 yen or about $65 to show that they are serious and in wanting to find a partner. So these are the hoops that people have to first jump through before they are even given access to all these government-hosted matchmaking events.
I see, but then do you think these events are necessary and will turn out to be effective in boosting low birth rates in your country?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because, well, I do think that there is obviously no harm in organizing these events, right? Because many youths today simply do not have the time, they do not have the opportunity, or they do not even have the courage to, go out and make new friends or meet new people outside of their immediate circles of friends or of colleagues. So it is important to create chances for them to meet other people who, like them, have an eye on marriage. But whether such government-hosted matchmaking events is the right way to do so, that I'm not so sure, because like in South Korea, where earlier on there was this very interesting discussion about the low return on investment. Likewise, here in Japan, it also tends to be very expensive to organize such sessions, but yet the hit rate is very low. So by way of example, let's just look at an example in Aichi Prefecture, which where its capital city is Nagoya, right? They had an event in October 2023 that cost 10 million yen, or about $67,000 to hold. And Aichi actually followed up with participants half a year later to see how the response has been like. And it was found that out of 400 attendees, there were only 5 couples that were matched. And these 400 attendees were actually selected out of over 2,000 applicants to begin with. And so we can see that the success rate is not that ideal. And moving the discussion even beyond events like in Aichi, looking at Miyagi, where one of its most famous cities is Sendai, its matchmaking service was one of the first in Japan to actually incorporate artificial intelligence when it was rolled out in November 2021. Of the nearly 7,000 matches that were made as of September 30th, which is like 3 years since the launch of the service, just 180 couples have gotten married. And so that's a success rate of just 2.5%. But yet on the other side of the picture, on the other side of the coin, we also do see surveys like one by Japan's Children and Families Agency in August that showed that 1 in 4 couples, married couples, actually met through matchmaking apps. So what I think this kind of suggests is that, many matches are actually being made on apps that are run by private operators without government intervention. And that kind of makes me wonder if taxpayers' money could be put to better use, maybe encouraging marriages or babies in other ways.
Yeah, interesting. From your perspective, what's the most important factor in encouraging young people to start families?
Well, the first step, I think, is to kind of make sure that young people are open-minded about meeting new people in the first place. So one very interesting survey that kind of surprised me showed a staggering result of like 46% of men and 30% of women in their 20s in Japan have never had any dating experience before. So I think that's an important first hurdle to overcome. But looking at the big picture, I think the very, very urgent issue is to kind of ensure that young people, and I think there was this discussion earlier as well, in South Korea as well, that young people actually feel financially secure and hopeful about their own futures before they have the freedom to even think about starting their own families. Otherwise, they would kind of see it as a sacrifice, and many, of course, would not be willing to take that step. Like, why would someone who is struggling to pay off their own debt want to incur even more costs in raising a family? So this kind of shows that, wages, I think, must increase drastically. There has to be much more financial job stability on the market, and mere handouts, to encourage families to start to encourage couples to start families, to have children. I don't think that will do the trick.
All right, Walter, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
No worries, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so it seems like these government-led matchmaking programs are here to stay as we're seeing more popping up. So ending off, what do you suggest to these programs so that they can increase their success rates?
Well, in order to increase the success rate, I think these initiatives should go beyond merely facilitating introductions and focus on equipping participants with the skills and support needed to build and maintain healthy relationships. So offering relationship education sessions on effective communication or emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and trust building can provide participants with essential knowledge that may need more formal learning opportunities. And post-event couple counseling opportunities could further help newly matched pairs navigate the early stages of their relationships and build strong foundations. Because it's not just about meeting, you have to maintain that in a healthy way. And fostering a positive social narrative as well around these events, emphasizing their modern and empowering nature, and showcasing success stories could also reduce stigma against these events and inspire broader participation.
So going beyond just providing a platform for them to meet, but also providing some good after service,
Yes.
right? And what do you think, Munju?
Yeah, just to add on to what Jihi said, just on the operation part, I suggest more aggressive marketing and promotions. Like, not that I have to know everything from like what's going on in the city, but I've never seen this kind of like government-led matchmaking programs before. So, and I've never seen it on like social networking services, which are like the primary sources of information of youth generation these days. So I believe like more active marketing would possibly gather more applicants and increase possibly and potentially the success rate of this government-led matchmaking programs.
Right, so more promotion, and we'll see what the future holds for these government-led matchmaking programs. And that's all from us today, but NewsGen will be back next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Choi Ji-hee.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Kang Mung-ju.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching, and have a lovely weekend. We are News Generation.